Oh, mate, that was funny. I almost did the thing where I start talking without there being a microphone around or enabled or whatever, like mute. And I was like, why is nothing, there's no, why is that, why? Oh, yeah. Duh. And then sound comes through. So, alright, how you're doing? Random day, interesting day, something different. Spoiler alert to anyone who checks out the Rand Nerds podcast. In 2 weeks ish, we do the Rand Nerds Christmas special and we do the Rand Nerds Game of the Year. Doesn't have to be a game released that year, but a game that we have played that year. I'm going to go over mine, right? But first, not particularly productive day, although I have been troubleshooting people's VR problems, and they're trying to come up with some pretty clear instructions, as well as fixing some of my own problems with VR chat on the Steam Deck, which didn't actually solve any of my problems. If you have an issue with it not launching on Steam Deck because you fiddled with settings like changed Proton versions or put in launch options and stuff like that, your best bet would either be to verify the integrity of the files and the properties of the game. And if that freezes, you have to restart your Steam Deck, verify properties, restart your Steam Deck, start the game, should be fine. Right? Or uninstall the game and reinstall the game. Also, turns out that VR chat cannot be streamed over your network using the old Steam in-home streaming thing. However, if you start the game on the machine that's going to be playing it, in my case Belial, my main PC, if I want to then stream from my Steam Deck a game that wouldn't normally play over the Steam in-home streaming thing will work. It only fails if you try to launch it from the Steam Deck or Steam, I forget, Steam Link, is that what it was called? Like, if you start it beforehand, fine. If you try and launch it from wherever you're trying to stream it to, fails. So just a little bit of a for you. I was also trying to get video playback to work in VR chat on Steam Deck. So videos in VR chat on Linux. Because traditionally they haven't worked because the way that VR chat grabs video, Proton doesn't like it. Proton being the compatibility layer that VR chat uses to do the thing. And well, there is kind of a workaround, but it doesn't work in all rooms. You're like, well, why would that matter? So, well, sometimes you go into VR chat and people are like, oh, mate, can you hear this cool track? Because you can have like embedded video players and stuff in rooms for live streams like Twitch streams or YouTube videos, and some rooms are built with playlists of random videos on YouTube like Monster Cut Audio and all that kind of stuff. It's just there, and people are, oh mate, this song's really cool, what do you think? And you'll be like, I can't hear it, I can't see it. Like, video players don't work on Linux. It can be really quite annoying. This doesn't work in every room, sadly, especially not one that I really like. What room it is irrelevant, but it's loaded with video content, loaded with audio content, and I absolutely love the room. Really lifts VR chat up there for me, but this doesn't work. But if you want to try and get video playback working, which could cause VR chat to have a bit of a hissy, like I just mentioned, verify integrity files, uninstall, reinstall, right? What you want to do is put in -- enable -AV Pro, one word, -in -Proton. That's it. Then your videos, in theory, should work. Sometimes they work completely. Other stuff you might only get a couple of seconds in and it'll freeze, but at least more stuff will kind of work. Apparently that's been going on in Proton Experimental. You have to be running in Proton Experimental from what I understand to get that to work. I don't know if they've made it work in other versions of Proton, but I really hope we can get all videos working in all versions of Proton on all versions of Linux, because right now VR chat is a bit of a ball ache to do things in. You lose a chunk of the experience there. But hopefully they get it sorted at some point and we can all play on equal footing and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, as I say, I've spent the day chilling out, still plagued, powering through. Kids have had pretty fun days. The wife and I have just been loafing. Groovy. Right. The Rad Nerds Game of the Year stuff. I got a list through from Ram today, because we're going to be doing a double podcast tonight. And it's incomplete. It's not accurate at all. It looks like over part of the Rad Nerds podcast that I do, it's crap. Looks like I haven't been talking about all the games that I've played this year. And I've played quite a few. But there's someone at my door. Turned on another light. So, light and difference, probably not any better, but whatever. I know it winds people up when I only use one light and that light's behind me, but tough. Because normally it's set up so that I'm looking at the screen, and you know what? I've lit my face. Anyway, Game of the Year. So I haven't mentioned all the games that I've played to RAM. Some examples would be Digimon Story, Cyber Sleuth, Ghost of Tsushima, Mini Metro, and just loads of other little games. Like, if there is ever a time that I don't really want to talk much on Rand Nerds podcast, I don't talk. Like, yeah, I haven't played anything this week. I'm going to play like the world's greatest game and not mention it. You know what I mean? If I want the podcast to end quicker because like I've got stuff to do or whatever, it's like, yeah, we'll just circle round that one. But the list is incomplete, and it's wrong actually. Not only is it incomplete, it's not even some stuff I played this year. Some of it was from Rand Nerds 24 hours, the 24-hour live stream I did last year. So don't know quite what was going on there, because Ram's the one that keeps track of that stuff, not me. But I looked down the list, and I was like, wow, this is shite. Like, there's so much stuff not on this list, and some of it's pretty good. But I've narrowed down what I would pick out of the chunk of games on the list. Because you had, I went and played through the Neptunia RPG series again this year. And I played the remake of Rebirth 1, which was a remake of Neptunia 1. So, Neptunia 1 got remade into Rebirth. Then it got remade into Reverse, if I remember correctly. And so it went from PlayStation 3 to PSP, and then onto PSP, PS Vita, and then onto PlayStation 5. And I played them on stream, and that was fun. But I was like, nah, I've spoken enough about Neptunia games over the bajillions of years. Though I don't know if Reverse came out this year. If it did, it was a good game. But I've already played. Already played through Rebirth more times than I can count. But it was fun. Plus, Falcom in that game is a beast. Love Falcom. Getting sidetracked. Ghost of Tsushima is pretty fun, but I never finished it because, frankly, I don't want to turn on my PlayStation 5. Is that really bad? I just didn't finish it. I got most of the way through. I was playing it through that Sony subscription thing, because Ghost of Tsushima is traditionally incredibly expensive for what it is. Gorgeous game, mind. Absolutely beautiful game. It's a samurai game, and I do quite like me some samurai games, but I was just like, no. So, I've picked 2, which would have been game that came out before and game that came out this year. But thankfully, through a little bit of a loophole, both games have come out this year. I'm going to have games of the year and some honourable mentions. This isn't to say that they are necessarily the best games, but games that I think had potential at this point. So, first one has to go onto my list, just because it's the most played game in my Steam library at 160 some odd hours. and it only came out this year. Zenith, The Last City, which is it's a virtual reality MMORPG. And it's hit and miss. It's by, is it Ramen VR? I think is the company behind it. And it came out in like January. And for the first chunk of the game, it is beautiful. It looks kind of neat. It's got the sufficient levels of VR jank. It wasn't ready for prime time when it came out, and frankly, I still don't think it is. Okay, you had some nice character models. The character creation was jank. You could play like a ranged mage that used guns, or you could use a blade master where you used all swords, and depending on how you swing your sword, you'd use different spells, or how you held your triggers, you'd use different spells, and all that. Irrelevant, right? It's a big old beefy MMORPG that realistically shouldn't take you a huge amount of time to finish. But there comes a point where the game goes from acceptable to complete dog shit. And that's around the... Oh my god, I can't remember what it's... I can't even remember what it's called. Obsidian Fortress? Giant fucking like black beefy fortress. Approximately the halfway point in the story. The story, by the way, is just like tacked together fluff. There's not really a lot there. And if you're not playing the game for the story, there's even less there because it just turns into a grind fest. Repetitive fetch quests and grinding and all that kind of stuff. Like most MMOs, but without a lot of fill to it. You know, and it was glitchy as all balls too, but... Once you get to that halfway point, once you get to Obsidian Fortress, they really start to ham it up with copy-paste assets, and it's frankly fucking terrible. That's around the same point as well when optimization just goes clean through the floor. So there were certain points where I was on a 5700 XT or a 6600 XT at the time. There are sections where my frame rate would just fall through the floor, just like look to your right, the frame rate gone, right? But even though it becomes a copy-paste mess for the last half of the game, you know, enemies that you saw as kind of random trash mobs at the start become big boy mobs later on. Like you see the same mobs again in the is it the next zone after the Obsidian Fortress? No, there's a couple of zones after the Obsidian Fortress. It's one of the last zones before the end of the game. The beginner enemies are there again, and items that they drop, it's either there or in one of the other zones. You can hand in like noob zone items to redeem higher level gear in the later bits, because the enemies are the same, the drops are the same. They've just the stats have been bumped up a bit for that one particular zone. You'll see trash mobs from like the only dungeon that was in the game at the time, which was right in the newbie zone. Those enemies become main enemies in later times, and random bandits also become main enemies at later times. And you're like, okay. But the reason that I'm elevating Zenith up there is that of all of the VR MMOs that I've played, Zenith was the cleanest. It's a small team, and I think they did a cracking job. They just released a little too early, and it shows potential. It really does show potential, because when you get in there and you're playing with mates, it's actually really quite fun. So for that, and knowing that they are still pushing updates, so they're still even developing like the tutorial zones, the newbie zones and all that kind of stuff, they're still doing that stuff. I think there were updates like a couple of weeks ago. I haven't jumped in months and months and months. They're adding in more content. I've been told they might be adding in more dungeons and stuff. They are still adding in stuff. Eventually, that game is going to be pretty fucking solid if you like MMOs and you like VR. It was all right. It was solid. The fact that you had multiple servers as well, and your character could just hop between servers. So if a server was full, your character was account bound, not server bound. That was absolutely brilliant. So I could just go, server's full, can't get in. Let's go on to this one. Right? The main issue I had towards the end, other than it being a grindy hellscape, right, was that voice chat. It has an in-game voice chat feature in it. So you just talk to other players, right? On Linux through Proton, because I'd swapped over to Linux again for my VR stuff. Voice chat didn't work. Voice chat wasn't supported by Proton. But it was when I was playing it on Windows, the voice chat worked brilliantly. It was a fun game. When you could get people together, those first few zones were great. There's like a starter zone, a small town, like a meadow. Then you go into the forests. And then after that, you go to like Obsidian Fortress, and that's when things get a bit flake. Like when one of the quest givers turns into a main mob, you're like, hey, but it's there. It's got potential. I still plan to actually go back to it just to see what they've done, because as I say, it's up there on my Steam list. I was really quite surprised how much time I put into it. I played through as 2 separate characters, one of each class. They've probably actually added in more classes at this point, which I will then go through and grind again. And the cool thing actually as well with it is that it was cross-platform. It was cross-play. So if you had an Oculus Quest 2, if you were playing on the Oculus Store on PC, if you were playing on Steam, if you were playing on the PlayStation, because I believe it was released on PlayStation VR, you could all get together on the same servers and just have a whale of a time. It was fucking top notch. I was so impressed with what they managed to do so early on. It just fell apart kind of midway through. There weren't enough things to kind of pad out the meal, if you get what I mean. Initially, the first 7 was good, but as you got further into it, you realise kind of how thin it was. But still, small team. Hopefully they're pushing it higher and higher and higher. It is fun and worth a try, although sadly one that you do require VR for. It can be played standalone if you own stuff like Quest 2, and I think like the Pico and all that in a like standalone headset. It is standalone, but I personally wouldn't play it in the standalone mode, because again, around Obsidian Fortress, at least when I played it, there were some optimization issues where the screen would fade to black and then come up with like the Zenith the Last City title would just sit on your screen. You'd still be hearing all the characters swinging their swords and trying to attack you and stuff. But you can't do anything about it because you are literally, it's kind of like flushing caches to have enough memory to do whatever it is that has to be done. And I was like, oh my god, how can anyone play like this? But again, it's a game released with potential. And the fact that a game came out this year on the top of my Steam list, fantastic. The next one is also a PC VR title, or also a VR title, but came out last year. Okay, it had a PC client released this year, a flat screen client released this year, which is why I'm counting it as part of this year's Game of the Years. I am normally incredibly anal when it comes to VR games. I do not want a flat screen game being turned into VR, and I don't want to have a VR game being released in flat screen. Because if it's released in flat screen, why did you put it on? Why did you put it into VR to begin with? Just don't. Okay. In VR chat's case, I make excuses. Social. Demio. I'm gonna give Demio. You did a good job with that flat screen release. That was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And they gave it away for free if you owned the VR version. But Demio is a tabletop RPG that takes place in either VR or flat screen. Demio or Demio. Demio. The dungeon master in the game calls it Demio. Basically, it's a tabletop RPG whereby you move certain characters through the dungeons to fight monsters, collect gold, unlock cards, and you find a key, and then you have to get to the next floor. And around 3 floors down, you fight a boss, and bam, you've done the module. It plays like Dungeons and Dragons, whereby you get modules for each kind of level. A module is a level, or a scenario is a level. And each character can use, as you get like 4 or 5 characters. I think there's more than that now. Like you've got a tank, a mage, an archer, the thief. There's a bard now, so 5, and then there's another character I think that I don't know what she does, but like each character has a role, what they're good at. So like the tank has an armor role you can use at the start of every turn. The archer has long range attacks. The rogue can stealth. The mage can stun. All sorts of things. So as a team, all these things work together, and as you progress, you unlock more cards. Characters get their own unique cards, as I say, like a unique ability, and you basically just go through dumping cards to activate skills, unlocking chests to find more cards, to use more skills, to go through the dungeon, and my God, it's great. You put the VR headset on, and it plays brilliantly on Oculus, whether it be PC or standalone. It plays great on PC VR through Steam, and it's cross-play between all of them as well. Right? So, and your account is tied together too. So you've got a Demio account, and your character on your Quest will be there on your Steam account and stuff. You put that headset on, or you sit there on the PC mode. It's actually a lot better in VR. It's fantastic in VR. You put that headset on, right? The interface is very different between PC and desktop, but pull down, and I swear some of the things that should only take like, we've only been playing for about half an hour or whatever, 3-4 hours go by like that. You finish a module and you go, do you want to move on to the next one? You know, absolutely phenomenal, fantastic, beautiful VR game. Just absolutely amazing. It's so much more detailed when you play it in VR as well, because you get to zoom in and look at the character models, pick up the like little character statues that you move around the map. You get to look at them, and like they have engravings on the bottom of the statues and stuff. And as you pick them up, you can look at character stats and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. If you don't have a VR headset, honestly, Demio is probably one of the ones I would recommend a VR headset for. Demio, VR Chat, Zenith, that kind of stuff. Totally worth a VR headset for. And if anyone wanted to play, fuck around, give me a shout, because I will play too. I'm looking for more people to play. Demio has the added bonus as well of being drop in, drop out co-op. So as you start a room, the game will generate you a 4-digit room code, and if you're streaming it, like I always do, people could see the room code on the screen and just join in. They could just come in, pick a character, and then if they wanted to, oh crap, I've got to go to work, or oh mate, I've just accidentally, hit myself over the head with something, I've got to leave, they can go and do that. And then the game actually scales difficulty according to how many players you have in the game. So there's no real loss to anyone coming in and leaving at a later point. It's pretty neat the way that it's been done, like that. I really do quite enjoy it. And that has in-game voice chat as well, but found that didn't always work very well on Linux either. But regardless, the two of my main what's it? Oh, and actually, I suppose that's a bonus with the Zenith as well. The fact, like, drop in, drop out. If your mate started on a different server, because things aren't account locked, or because things aren't server locked, you could literally go, oh yeah, well I started playing on blah 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 server, and I'm on this blah 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 server. You just or go, yeah, fuck it, let's all just have a get together on this random server, and off we go. All right, so yeah, fantastic games. Was very surprised that I pulled the games out of the VR catalogue, but they are genuinely pretty fucking good. Honourable mention, though, has to go to any game that is listed as free to play, and I don't give a shite what anyone says about free to play games at this point. But like, imagine Honkai Impact, Genshin Impact, Tower of Fantasy, Warzone, Call of Duty Warzone, Valorant, League of Legends, Dota. I played a lot of free-to-play games this year, around the July time, and they were absolutely fucking fantastic. For the money that you play, the content you get out of them, the amount of time that you can get out of them, brilliant. And the fact that no one has to pay to play. Yeah, there are things in there that you can dump money on, but realistically, You don't have to, and they look amazing. There are RPGs, there are MMOs, there are shooters, there are MOBAs, just all sorts of games, all there free for you to play. It is a great time to be a gamer, especially a PC gamer these days, just for all the shite you have access to the now. And as soon as companies pull their fingers out of their asses or their heads out of their asses, and we stop doing exclusives and we stop locking multiplayer down to specific systems, that will be even better. The idea that if you're playing something that isn't input sensitive or input heavy, for example, what I mean by that is like shooters versus like mouse and keyboard versus controllers, that can get a bit tense, right? But if you're playing on another type of game like an RPG or something that you can easily get away with on controllers, make it so that console and PC can play together. Make it so that mobile gamers can get in there and play together. Because a lot of these games, some of these games actually, I should say, like Genshin Impact, it's on the phone. You know, you can play with your Genshin account on your phone, on your iPad, on your PC. I think on your PlayStation. I think Sony might have, decided to soften up with their kind of, if you're going to play on PlayStation, you can only do whatever. Look at Fortnite. Free to play. It's on every platform. Go for it. Just go balls deep and you've got hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of fun. So, if you like Fortnite. But thankfully they got rid of that building mode. But I haven't played it since they got rid of the building mode, so... But that is it. That is my day. Because I've just realised I might actually be making RAM wait that now. So I'm gonna go and do the Rand Nerds podcast. Those were my Rand Nerds Game of the Year picks that you won't actually know for another few weeks. But I hope you guys are all good. I mean, let's just be fair. These games topped stuff like Elden Ring. Okay. So, great time. Hope you're well. God, still feeling like death. I got too excited there. The stamina's completely gone. And I'll see you all with a bit of luck in the next one.